Hey everyone, Brad Chmielewski here with episode 150. Yes, it's 150 episodes of Shatter The Vain. How it started with episode 1, it was just me. It used to be a solo podcast. I think I mentioned this previous on other kind of anniversary milestone episodes where it's just me talking to the microphone about Vainglory. The game was much smaller, less people playing at that time. Then we got guests on and started just doing these great interviews, talking about the game, gushing about it every week. And someone that's been on the podcast quite a few times has been DragonBorne, and he's joining me this time once again for two reasons. One, I love having him on, love talking to him, and the Challenger battles just ended this past weekend, so it made a lot of sense to talk with him about all of this, just hear his thoughts about what goes into the production, his opinions on the teams. Very excited because he's super close to it. Like, I watched them all. I saw the matches play out how they happen, but he's in there every week focused on these players. It's really cool to get his opinions on it. So yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of that for most of the episode. And the news, it's a small part at the end of the episode. So we'll see. I think there'll be more news coming up in the next couple of weeks because we got that hero tease and we got some more stuff about the API that came out. So yeah, stay tuned for more news on episode 151. But before we jump into this, got to mention the Patreon. That's over at patreon.com/Shatter The Vain. If you can support the show, that'd be awesome. 150 episodes, just been doing this because I love talking about the game, love podcasting. Yeah, it's been great. Hopefully you've been enjoying it too. So if you can support it, fantastic. If not, thank you for listening or watching, depending on how you consume this. There is the YouTube version for all the listeners out there that didn't know that. But let's do it. Let's jump into episode 150.
Shatter the Vain.
This is the 150th episode of Shatter the Vain. My name is Brad Chmielewski, and it's a podcast all about Vainglory. Every week, try to break down the news, gameplay, game tips, and hopefully we can become better players together. And this week, I have DragonBorne joining me once again. I think DragonBorne has been a guest on the podcast more than anyone else over the last 150 episodes, so it seemed only fitting to have you on for this one. Plus, the Challenger battles just wrapped up, so it's a perfect time for us to catch up and just see what's happening. Welcome.
Oh, Brad, thanks for having me on again. And yeah, it's been several times. It's been a while since the last time I was on, but obviously a longtime listener of the podcast, and just happy to be here and talk about Vainglory.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're running at all today. It seemed like yesterday's it was a crazy day. I watched most of them, so I can only imagine what went into it.
It was crazy. A lot going on. Obviously, it wouldn't be a live esports production without some hiccups along the way. But overall, a really kind of exciting end to the first split of this season, and so just so many things to talk about. So I guess I'll let you guide me into where you want to start.
Yeah, so I think this episode is going to be a lot about the Challenger battles and kind of what went on there. So if you're not an esports, fan or watcher, it might not be the episode for you, but hopefully DragonBorne and I can give you maybe some reasons to start watching and get excited, especially for the Challenger scene this past time and this time coming up, because I think it's going to be worth watching and seeing what's happening. So I think first off, I just got to say, yesterday's, it went till about 1 a.m., I think, on the Eastern time. And
yeah,
just the amount of work that goes into VIS and VGL, like, you guys are just doing it. You're not part of Super Evil Megacorp. Super Evil Megacorp, of course, helps out a little bit with what they can and when they can. But yeah, this is all like your guys' run production. And I know just putting out a podcast and other shows every week, it's a lot of work. So yeah, my hat's off to you for putting this together basically every 2 times a week, every week, right?
Yeah, it can be pretty hectic. VIS is really kind of the culmination of a lot of things that here, myself and the team around me really kind of wanted to make happen. We started off as BIS Pro way back, back when there was really like where VGL kind of had merged with Super Evil that were running everything, and we wanted to kind of create something that was very compelling, very exciting. We felt like there could be a lot more content for esports, and I actually was on the show when we launched Vis Pro, I think shortly after at least, to talk about it, what it was about, and it was like our own little league we had created where all the top teams did come and play, and they played for like a league-like structure, very similar actually to kind of how Vainglory 8 ended up becoming. At that time, it really wasn't like that, the structure at least. And then ultimately, we kind of transitioned into that kind of league structure as well. But we did a pretty good job, and the folks over at SCMC, they liked it. They liked what VGL was doing. They liked what we were doing. And we ended up splitting the two regions up eventually as VIS ended up working on NA exclusively, VGL doing the EU stuff, which made sense considering we're based in NA and they were based in the EU. And what we basically, both productions really improving. I don't know if you've watched VGL, really improving their production quality. It looks really great this season. Yeah, I know I enjoyed watching it.
I think that for the first week, I remember when it launched, it was a little confusing because I think VGL did Wednesday or Tuesdays and VIS did Wednesdays.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like,
days.
Whew, like I could only imagine like you guys had to be up and going early, and then Blueberries and them had to be up and going late. So yeah, I think it made so much more sense to split the two up per region.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's just been kind of a growth opportunity for us, and we really, I love it. I love working as a streamer, and I was really a small-time little streamer, but I had started something back in the Vertigo days, doing basically streaming live scrims, right? And doing them as like Vertigo TV, and that was fairly popular in the sense that it hadn't really been done, and it looked pretty good. And of course, what VIS is today, much higher quality. And we do more than just Vainglory, but I would say for all of us, Vainglory is where a lot of the passion and a lot of the heart goes as far as what we like to play and what we like to stream. I know for me, Vainglory is still probably the number one game I play over everything, over all systems. So it's still that for me.
Because there is the CEOPS tournament you guys have started and kind of are, I think, still working through, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't play that game or follow that scene very well, so.
Yeah, they're a very passionate community, not unlike what we see in Vainglory, but much smaller. Vainglory definitely, when it comes to mobile esports, it's really at the forefront of all the discussion. So yeah, this past Saturday, I just want to give a quick recap of kind of what happened for everyone that loves the competitive side. Challenge battles, the format was a little different, very similar overall, double elimination, and it was 64 teams, which is what we saw last season. But one of the big differences is kind of as we got to the challenge battles, there were some changes there. We did keep the single ban process. That we didn't move to double ban, mostly for logistics. I would say that it wasn't, the desire wasn't there, but because it's not built into the game, a little difficult to execute across 64 teams who are playing all at once, multiple series on a single day even. But it was crazy. We actually, we had a lot of great teams. We had the return of Rage Pingers. NRG had picked up a team in Challengers with Hardek, Gaspy, and Chombo. They were 7th seed with a lot riding on them. I think a lot of people with mixed expectations. We had Team Enforcers returning, and we had Liberation X returning, and then this really strong, dominant team called One Piece 101 that had a lot of pieces from around the league over the last few seasons, including Lost Boy Toff. And then all these teams jam-packed with talent, culminating in the Challenger Series, working their way up. So it was the first couple of weeks, a little interesting. You had teams winning like you would expect them, not a lot of upsets. But when we got into our final week 4, the playoffs, it was where things really heated up. We had Ardent Esports was there, Nemesis was there, NRG was there, Rage Pingers, Enforcers, 101, Liberation X. It was just packed. 8 teams of just truly dominant and talented players and teams. So, and there was a lot that there was actually some really good teams that barely made it in. That actually didn't make it into the week 4 playoffs, which they were really talented as well. Hello Girls comes to mind, and then one of the teams that did make it, Giraffes. So, last split was really intense. I think this split is going to be even more intense, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, we went through 4 weeks of play. We ended up being where we got to the final three. Liberation X had not lost a single game until they went up against Necrolite. And then they lost one, but then beat Necrolite, then lost the 101, and then 101. Oh, sorry, reverse that. They won all the way to finals, beat 101, and then losing to 101 in the finals. 101 ended up beating them in that best of 5, and those were like your top 3 teams. I think the biggest surprise really was there was a lot of teams that didn't make it to the final 3, and Necrolite was a team that looking really good during the challenge battles this past Saturday, also made it, and actually had at least had beaten one game off Liberation X and had beaten 101. So it was definitely one of those kind of like really strong teams that I think people weren't sure about, but clearly their performance was stating that they deserved to be in the challenge battles.
Yeah. No, I think, all those games this past weekend, but leading up to it, like it was really fun to watch this time because there's so many pro players now in the scene and they're on these different teams, and we saw Lost Boy and Hardic go to these different teams, and it made I think watching the challenger battles even that much more exciting because they're familiar names, people been supporting and who've been with the game so long, so it makes you a little more invested, I think, now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I noticed these teams, we obviously were able to stream many of these games and they were a lot of fun to watch. I think that when you look at overall how they did and where, the ups and downs as far as how they performed, there's a lot of cool things to talk about there. I don't know how detailed you want to get into each team and like specifically like how I feel they did or how I think people were perceiving they were to do. I actually think, NRG did pretty well all the way up until that, I think they made it to 5th place, 5th, 6th.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they, definitely did a little bit better than their seeding, but, one of the teams that I think ran into this wall, which was the insane amount of talent at the high end of this, at the top end of this challenger bracket, because there were just so many top end teams. And even now, when we look into the next split, there's a lot of really good teams.
Yeah, I think, watching Hardic and being a fan of C9 and even before that, his previous teams and him and Lost Boy, it was kind of like rooting for them to make it because you wanted to see them get back into the V8. So yeah, really cool to see. And then the finals, or I guess not, yeah, I guess it would be called the finals. These were challenger battles to get in or out of the Vainglory 8 this past weekend. Like we said, they ran until 1 a.m. Eastern time last night. And I think all but there was a best of the first match was 4 games and the other 2 went to all 5 games, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was so challenge battles was pretty crazy, and it was really a reflection of that entire top 8 teams. NRG actually did face against 101, so Lost Boy and Hardic had their match, their series in the loser bracket when 101 had got knocked down, and 101 actually had to go through them. They had to go through Rage Pingers. They had to go through a lot of really good teams, and they didn't go unscathed, right? They were losing games. They got knocked down the loser bracket from Necrolite. They were losing games to all of these teams that you expected them to just roll over, and they weren't. And so when they qualified for challenge battles, it was actually a surprise because they ended up winning over Liberation X 3-0. Mm-hmm. So they were getting, losing games to everybody and falling down and not really performing well. And then Lost Boy Toph comes in and just, carries them the last leg of the race and gets them, to the top. And not to say that Paulie didn't win games with him at the high end. He did. It just, there was definitely near the end of the tournament more Lost Boy Toph. And so that qualified them for first place, so they had the first seed. They got their choosing, and this is what was very different, and I do want the viewer, or the listeners and the viewers to just keep this in mind, was really different about this season, was if you were the number 1 seed challenger team, you did not go up against necessarily the bottom seeded Vainglory 8 team for relegation. You actually got to pick. You got to choose. And they looked at it. They said, all right, who do we feel is the weakest? But it was more, when I talked to these teams, it was more about who they thought was weaker, who they thought had the more points. It was about strength of schedule. They looked at it and said, look, we could go for the forward points now. Yeah, moving forward. So both teams, Liberation and 101, they looked at the opposing team's strength of schedules and said, all right, if you actually look at it, Rogue played a relatively easier schedule. Now, the first split is a longer season. You have 4 matches, but Rogue had played some of the lower teams that they had 4 points. So one of the reasons they had those points, I think when you look back at it, you're like, look, if we want a chance to surpass that or get into the top 6, we need to look at a schedule that's favorable. And if you look at Misfits as well as Echo Fox, they had played Cloud9, Team Solo Mid, and Hammer's Velocity. So those teams had very hard schedules the first split. It's partly the reason why they didn't have that many points. And on top of that, that made it very favorable for them to get picked. So although they were the two lower seeded teams as well, because they didn't have any points, they were picked because of that reason. There was like no reason to get points if you can get an easier schedule and earn your points yourself.
That's true. I guess I didn't think about that going forward. That's pretty smart of them, because we've seen Gangstars kind of run into a little bit of a challenge now that they're going up against some of these harder teams. So
yeah, I mean it's really tough when you go up against these it's like his top 3 or 4 teams that are just really hard to get past. Gangsters being one of them, that they seem to be definitely in a league of their own. Really, there's 8 teams in the Vainglory 8, but clearly a distinction, a very strong distinction. And the first week there was a few up and downs with some of these teams, but as the weeks passed, it was very clear who the top 4 teams were, and it was not by even a small margin. So yeah, that definitely played into it. One of the other things that was really interesting was, obviously, Misfits was considered by 101 to be one of the lower seed teams, but there's a little bit of history there. Misfits actually went up against 101 right before I think they hadn't gotten picked up by Misfits yet. They were still under their old Fate Zero name, but they were in Vis Pro during the winter season, and they played up and they ended up dropping those games as well. So there was a little bit of rivalry there.
Okay, makes sense. They wanted to prove that to him or something.
Yeah, exactly. There was, that wasn't why they picked him. The strength of schedule was it as well, but there was definitely that sense that there was people in the community, there were people in the competitive scene even that said, no, Misfits is better than they were back then, right? This is not going to be easy for 101. And just to be clarified, 101 beat Misfits 3-0. It was not even close.
Yeah.
Those games were not even close. So, yeah, clearly 101. And they had Lost Boy Talk for those, at least the 2 games we had on stream. We did not stream the 3rd game. It will be up on our YouTube channel afterwards as on demand. But, yeah, so 101, like I said, had that little bit of a rougher ride. And then they just charged in at the end and then just dominated in the challenge battles.
Yeah, so those 3 teams were Misfits, Rogue, and Echo Fox. Did it turn out like you thought it would? 3 teams on the NA side. Did this go the way you thought it was, or you thought there was going to be all 3 were out?
I mean, I was not one of those people, and it's easy to say this now, right, in hindsight. I was not one of these people that felt like the Vainglory teams were substantially better than the Challengers. I felt like this is one of the strongest set of Challenger teams we've ever seen. Okay. And I think many people agreed with that. I just think that there was this notion that, well, no. These Vainglory 8 teams have been scrimming against Vainglory 8 teams. They look bad, but they're actually good. The challenge is that these really good Challenger teams, Liberation and One Piece 101 specifically, have also been scrimming against these top Vainglory 8 teams. They've actually been scrimming with double band draft format in a private area, so there's not a lot of public knowledge of these, but they were taking this very seriously months, or at least a month ago. So in a way, that advantage that maybe the Vainglory 8 teams had was actually a disadvantage, because the scrims that these Challenger teams had were all private. Okay. And so the Vainglory 8 teams, they have all these public matches that you can watch, that you can study, that really say, hey, this is how we play, whereas these Challenger teams were competing at the same level, scrimming against these top teams, but doing so privately, which I think gave them an advantage. So it was something I think that maybe that little factor was overlooked, and there was a surprise element. I can tell you just from the drafting, they were not unprepared. They were very prepared. We actually saw One Piece 101 in their second game pull out. They pulled out a Garchomp, and they just
Grumpjaw, yeah.
Grumpjaw, and just dominated with it. And it's something we saw later on, and we'll talk about those games too. But they've done their homework. They were very prepared, and it was not surprising to me. I will say this: I was not going to be surprised if all 3 Challenger teams made it, because Necrolite was kind of that under the radar team. I actually think Necrolite got forced to play one of the better Challenger teams. Yeah. I think that, well, at least I would say they were middle of the pack. I think Rogue is actually pretty good. If Necrolite had actually played, let's say Misfits, I think they might have actually won that. There was a good chance. Is that a good chance that actually all 3 Challenger teams would have made it? And it's never happened before. First time in Challenger history is that more than one has made it. But the fact that, all three teams were so strong, and now you've got these two other teams, Echo Fox and Misfits, that have gotten knocked down because of this. You still have a very, very top-heavy challenger bracket.
Yeah, so yeah, the Rogue, I kind of thought that they would make it, or stay in. I felt like they performed really well in the last week of Vainglory 8, and I think they were just starting to, I won't say like finally click and work together as a team a little better than maybe we saw in the first couple of weeks. So I kind of thought they were going to perform pretty well against the challenger team. So I guess not a huge surprise there for myself.
I think it was actually, not surprising because it was close. I mean, it was very, very close. That went to 5 games. That was actually one of the longest series we had. Games went very, very long. There was no clear this team is better than this team. I mean, Necrolites took Rogue down to the very last game, and they actually were winning in 2 of the games they lost.
Yeah,
Necrolites was. So Rogue, very, very thankful. Again, some of that veteranship, some of that just playing together at that high skill tier level, maybe a little bit longer, paid off. And I think, nod to Rogue, they just, a lot of people when they first made it under the banner of Anarchy really discredited them. This team's not that great. This is one of the bottom teams. And no, I think they really deserve to be there. But, definitely it's clear that the challenger teams are not that skilled below these bottom Vainglory 8 teams. And yeah, that Rogue series really could have gone either way. I think they're really thankful. They're staying at home today saying, man, we really played well, but we really dodged a very close bullet.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the match with Echo Fox. And this was, I guess, the surprise match here because after, was it 1 game? Then Fuji stepped in and I think he just took control. Like, he's like, I got to save this team.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I didn't know he was going to step in. I had heard people talk about him scrimming, but I wasn't sure if they felt that would be appropriate for him to come in. I've talked to him in the past where he had talked about really wanting to be a coach, not wanting to take it away from the players. So that was pretty surprising, and it was really exciting. I mean, everyone got so hyped. The energy, even with me, like I was so excited to see him. And he stepped in after the second game, or after the first game, and actually almost helped this team win it. It was really unfortunate, and this probably is the game that really kind of forced Echo Fox into the challenge battles. Because if they had won this second game with Fuji, they definitely looked strong the second 2 games. They probably would not. We probably would be having a different conversation today, but they lost it. He also pulled out that CP Grumchaw, and that was very, very. That was probably the best play we've seen of it, apart from seeing that One Piece 101 match with it. And they look like a different team. It's really hard to quantify, but it really comes down to how they rotated and their objectives taking. So much different with Fuji on the roster.
Yeah, I know. Had Fuji on the Halcyon report recently talking about maybe the Echo Fox issues and struggles they've been having, and I believe he's just trying to really get the team to synergize and work together because they are these players that we all know for so long with Kalamik and Mishki and Lone Delphi. So we all feel like, at least me, I feel like they should be doing great. They should be a top team. Like you just sometimes can't put all stars together and they make a great team.
You're absolutely right. You really can't. And sometimes this can really extend to anybody, actually. And it comes down to, just shot calling. You really need that dedicated shot caller. And I think that when you watch them play, you could tell that they're not as good at, once they have a lead, taking advantage of it, maybe getting some objectives. And that could be a real challenge. We actually see this with a lot of the challenger teams actually as well. And I'm really surprised how well they played against these Vainglory 8 teams, because I was expecting it to be a little bit harder. But typically, the teams that really aren't quite as good, maybe not the very, very top of the standings, are teams that, they'll win, they'll have really good mechanical skills, but they'll struggle on making a decision that ultimately helps them win the game, at each stage, at each phase of the early to the mid. They'll maybe forgo an objective or be over aggressive too. That happens a lot as well. So yeah, you definitely, kind of how the Echo Fox had been playing was a little disappointing. I think we all expected them to be a lot better, but as the season unfolded, it was clear that the formula really wasn't working.
I think the most exciting game of the night and of the Echo Fox game was that was it game 4 with Fuji on Scarf, and Kolamik was actually on Flicker. They got him off Lance finally. And so this game seemed to go on for, I think it was like over a 30-minute game, almost, past that.
Well, I mean, that was the big surprise, I think, was the resurgence of Scarf, these challenge battles. Scarf had a big role. And if you guys have been following hero trends and hero pools, Scarf has started to creep his way back into the meta. And he really is, seems to be becoming a bigger factor. I actually played a game where I Love Joseph played Scarf in the jungle and just dominating. It's completely different, when you have a really good Scarf, obviously. But, these are definitely heroes that these teams are playing, and they really want to, kind of keep some of these picks close to vest. But really clear to me was that Grumpjaw definitely has a niche where he can play very effectively, and Scarf does as well. And Fuji played Scarf phenomenally, but it's not because he's the only one that's playing it. That is a hero that I think you'll expect to see more and more of.
And he's known for playing Scarf quite a bit. Like even back in the day, like you could see him pull that out, hit that, and Rhyme were some of his heroes he'd go to quite a bit.
Yeah, there was definitely a matchup where they were, I believe, Echo Fox. I'm trying to think of what they ended up playing. I think it was game 1 where they were going into a Finn Glaive and they didn't pick a Rhyme, but they were on A side, so it was kind of a tough. When you have an Adagio Glaive pick, those are 2 flex picks. You really can't judge how that next. Are you going to pull out a ranged jungler where a Rhyme wouldn't be as effective? But they ended up pulling out Finn and taking Adagio in the lane and Glaive in the jungle. But other than that, they really picked well. Like that was kind of a tough spot for them when they kind of gave up both really strong flex picks over to Liberation. But Liberation, and I firmly believe this, I think they really were the best challenger team overall. They did lose to 101. And they did, have struggling with Echo Fox, but I just think that was a testament to how good Echo Fox was. I don't believe that overall, there were too many teams better than them. I think maybe 101 gets close, and they did win, so by all rights, they are considered better. But I think the body of work, I'd really like to see how it plays out in Vainglory 8. I think that you're going to see Liberation X really impress a lot of people.
Right, yeah. And I wonder if with Echo Fox, if Fuji wouldn't have stepped in, it might have been a clean sweep for Liberation X, because like you said, they were doing so well. And so I'm interested to see what happens with Echo Fox moving forward, if they add another sub to the team and kind of start tweaking things a little bit in the next challenger battle.
Yeah, I'd have to imagine, these organizations definitely keeping an eye on it. As we're getting ready for the next split, there's a lot of rule clarifications that's taken place, even over the last few days, with Challengers series for Split 2 actually starting this week. So this Tuesday and Wednesday we'll be kicking it off. So not a lot of time.
Right,
but the big thing is roster flexibility. So for all those players that are looking to actually register, you had to have already registered to get in. So if you don't get an email by tomorrow morning, chances are you didn't make the cut. But for the teams that do get in, there's actually a lot of flexibility in roster changes now this season, where you actually just have to give a 24-hour notice. You can actually make roster swaps throughout the entire Challenger series. And SCMC really communicated that they really want to see these teams build. This is like a building phase for them. And if you're a good team that gets dropped down, it's because you need to rebuild. And so they didn't want to make it so it was impossible for you to rebuild, or you had to wait weeks to rebuild. They wanted it to start right away. So teams can actually begin the process of adding people, removing people, and building their team throughout the entire tournament this coming Split 2.
But some of these, like Echo Fox and Misfits, they could have contracts that might last longer that we don't know about. Never know.
Yeah, this is true. But the one thing I would say is, a good example of this would be Cloud9. By all accounts, that was not so. I don't know the details of Cloud9, but from what I've heard, that was not when they had Hardek and Lost Boy. That was not a matter of their contract being up. That was a matter of they were taking drastic changes in direction. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, teams, if they want to change, they will change their roster. And I believe, it's the way esports is, unfortunately for the players, this could be really tough and this could be really challenging. But a lot of these contracts are written in a way where, performance is a factor and they can be used as a factor to make changes. And I don't know the specifics of any of these contracts, but I have to imagine that these big organizations have definitely padded themselves with risk. So what that means for the players is it means that you have to constantly be performing. You have to be playing at your best. You really can't take these lightly. You can't not show up to practice. You can't, blow off scrims. You have to really try to play your best and improve. But, one of the things I think we see the most with some of these bottom teams in Vainglory is that, they're really playing it from the behind. Like, they're not developing, improving, and creating new meta. They're not coming up with a draft that they feel is actually going to really impact and surprise people. They're really learning at the same pace I think a lot of the challenger teams were learning at. I think just, Misfits is a good example of a really good mechanically team that I think just struggled by not being able to spend the time to develop and create strategies that worked best for their team composition that maybe would surprise a team and something that people would have to even study. I think they played very standard for at least some of the Vainglory 8, very meta picks, very, maybe actually a couple steps behind the other Vainglory 8 teams, which I think kind of surprised them at first and something they really tried to work on, but maybe a little too late.
Yeah, so you touched on this like rebuilding phase, and we talked about this a little bit offline, but I was wondering, like, SCMC, like, I guess, touted these organizations coming in, they had this invitational, these are big names coming in, Echo Fox, Misfits, Rogue, these pro orgs are coming in. It's not just three friends hanging out at their house playing the game. They wanted to get the hype, build it. So I was wondering, man, if I was SMC, I would kind of be disappointed that these orgs aren't performing. But yeah, we chat a little bit offline, and I think that rebuilding phase maybe makes sense. Like, they need to get better players, right?
Yeah, and I think that you kind of have to allow for that. I think SCMC clearly wants, with the way that the Challengers bracket is set up, which now that you have the flexibility to change rosters, they really want that to be communicated, and they really want that to be clear that, this is a building phase in the Challengers. The Vainglory 8 is kind of when you make it and you get the stability. Obviously, teams can get, relegated out. But, they really want to see that. And I think that, I don't think that from SCMC's point of view, they're worried about it. They really want the game to grow naturally and organically, and they want the competitive scene to grow, and they want to make rules as it matures, but they don't want to, don't want to show favoritism. I can tell you that They really stressed that they really wanted they actually were trying to push to try to get double ban draft in the Challengers. Like, they really wanted it, and they wanted it so there was a competitive even playing field for the Challenger teams once they made it to challenge battles, because they were going all this time. And actually, you talk to, like, look at a team like Misfits or Echo Fox. They've been playing and scrimming on double ban drafts this entire time, and now they've got to get knocked down and play on single ban. I mean, that really puts you down at a disadvantage. Actually, it's just it's actually hard. So what happened is, they really tried, but technically we couldn't do it. Too many teams, and the tools that are in place to do double ban draft out of the game would be a logistical nightmare to try to implement for all these teams and all these players. And the time that it would take would exasperate the amount of time we already spent, and multiply it by a factor of 5 probably. So right now it's not in the game. Once it comes into the game, we will have it. But that was something that SCMC really communicated well. They really wanted this to be as even. They wanted every single challenger team to have a shot at these relegation spots. That being said, though, I really see it's kind of a conundrum, because it really will be hard for these teams to recruit players and to focus. And when the risk of, especially for a mid-split relegation, you basically start off the season maybe a little weak and get forced out, and it ruins all your chances to make it to a live championship.
Yeah, that was one of the other things I wanted to touch on was, should we only have this relegation thing happen after the season? Like, it's at the end, like the finals, the live final, that's already, like, those teams are going, and the bottom teams, now you got to play to stay here, otherwise you're out, and the next split you're not in, because like we saw these teams face up against a harder bracket, and that could just be a bad month, really, or a bad patch even.
Yeah, I can tell you, Misfits and Echo Fox sure feel so. Right? They definitely can appreciate how a harder schedule, and it's kind of random in the sense that you're starting your schedule maybe harder or weaker on one end just randomly. There's no
Right.
it's just like, all right, here's how we want everyone to play everybody, but whoever gets the harder schedule or earlier schedule kind of is at a disadvantage, because even if you make it through the second split, get number 1 seed and beat the Vainglory 8 team, you don't get to go to the live championship. And I actually misspoke during the stream yesterday saying I thought they did, because it actually surprised me that was the case. It really meant that once you're knocked out, once you're out of the Challenger or the Vainglory 8 for that first split, or if you're a Challenger team that didn't make it, you have really nothing other than to make it to Vainglory 8 for the next season, but you really can't make it to that live championship. And it's interesting how that's all going to play out.
You'd have to win every game all the way till the end to get enough points for it. Like it's going to be hard. I think TSM has 23 or 26 points right now, and they're guaranteed in. So
but to clarify, even if you so there's 6 teams that will make it to the Vainglory live championship, or so many teams that will make it. So even if there's a team that gets enough points to qualify, but is in the bottom 3, because remember 3 get relegated on the bottom.
Right.
A team can't come take their points and knock them out of going to the live championship.
Oh, right. Yeah. No. Okay. No.
So in a way, at least the way I was told as of now, once the end of split 1 ends in the Vainglory 8, those are the teams going regardless. It's going to actually create a possibility where a team gets relegated out that actually goes to the live championship. They'll get relegated out first of the Vainglory 8 and then get to go to the live championship. They technically could go and win it all, and that would be a very strange set of circumstances. I'm not really sure if that makes a lot of sense. I'd be really kind of curious. The fact that 6 teams get to go, I really don't see why they would even relegate 3 teams. So yeah, there's a lot of weird things that can happen.
So should they only do this relegation after the season? Because like Misfits and Echo Fox, they have 0 downtime now. Like all these other V8 teams, they had like a week off to kind of practice and recoup. They had to do these Challenger battles, and now they have to start the Challenger phase all over again. Like there's no rest. There's not even like, all right, what happened? Let's take a moment.
Yeah, there's really 2 schools of thoughts on this. And there's one is that you want top talent in a young esports to be able to rise to the top quickly. If you create too many barriers to these really bright players, really, really good teams that are coming in and surprising. I mean, you're going to see them. There are going to be teams. Enforcers picked up some new players. Rage Pingers. These are teams that all had a shot at the Challenger series to be able to relegate. If you limit that, if you say no, we're not going to give you the stage or the platform to grow quickly, then overall your competitive scene does stagnate a little bit. The faces don't change. The better players don't come in, and actually it makes it hard from a recruiting point of view. You don't know who's good, because a team beating a 7 seed beating a 66 seed or 64 seed will look really good, but they won't look good going up against another 5 seed or 4 seed, and that's really how you measure these things. But then the other school of thought is that you need consistency, though, from a marketing point of view, from actually a player performance point of view as well, right? You're signing these players to long-term contracts to make a season that's so unstable for the players that says, no, you're in this league, but you could easily lose this in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And Vainglory comes from a culture that's pretty unique to Vainglory, where seasons, player turnover, everything happens in very, very small amounts of time. For the longest time, nobody signed players to longer than 3-month contracts because the season was over in 3 months. You didn't want to, if you had a bad season, you didn't want to be stuck with players, carrying over to the next season. It wasn't until they introduced the World Tournament and then introduced the format of all of these seasonal regional tournaments leading up to a giant World Tournament that you really even had anything to work for.
Mm-hmm. But man, it's exhausting to follow for outsiders. Nonetheless, like, oh wait, I thought he was on that team, and all that kind of switch up. So
yeah, I agree. So stability is a big deal, and you build stability by having it harder, right? Harder to move leagues by creating a format where there's layers, maybe different levels. Maybe it's not just challengers in Vainglory 8. Maybe there's multiple levels and we see this a lot in other esports. There are different levels of leagues that teams can work their way through and get relegated into higher and higher levels. But that's a much more mature platform, and that definitely is designed to protect the interest of these big organizations that are getting top tier talent, that are getting, that maybe are right on the edge of being near the bottom half, but, with the potential of being better the next season. So, there's two schools of thoughts. And Brad, I think that they both have merit because you really want to promote the growth of these esports. But at the end of the day, a lot of these players, they just want to get signed by teams, right? They're playing really good. They're playing their hearts out to get picked up. And I think it really would be probably more beneficial is to make it a little bit harder to get knocked out, to maybe have different levels of leagues, and to allow these teams to look at these bottom leagues and actually recruit these players at the end of the season, provided they're not under contract, to grow, to build a roster, to improve if they had a little bit of a rough season, not be forced all the way down to the bottom. I mean, it's like busy work to be a number 1 seed like Echo Fox is going to be, to play a 64 seed. There's not a lot of value that match has for either parties.
Right. They're gonna, if they don't stomp them, then it's kind of, man, then Echo Fox is in big trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's going to be any doubt. They're going to stomp them. And that's the challenge with this format, is that it really creates a lot of busy work. The first week, maybe even the first week and a half of these challengers, these really good teams, these really top teams, are forced to play matches that don't provide them value. They really don't show their hand at all anyways, because they could probably mechanically outplay them so well they could pick anything. Mm-hmm. And then that results in poor viewership. You're looking at this one, what this is really, you want to see the star players, but you don't want to have to see them play the very, very bottom. And so I don't know how excited Echo Fox is about this, about having to go through this busy work of games to make it all the way back to the top to hopefully get their spot back. It's a lot of work for something that has a lot of risk.
That's true, yeah. So this all, I guess, starts again on Tuesday. What can we look forward to this time? Do you expect anything different? Or do you expect Echo Fox and Misfits to be these top teams to come out of this?
It's going to be hard to say because we do have a lot of good teams. We will be announcing the brackets really soon. So by the time this is published, this podcast is out there, you should be seeing announcements at This League on Twitter as we publish these out really soon. There are a lot of good teams. So it's really hard to say, Brad. I'll be honest. I would say that, teams like Necrolite really surprised a lot at how well they played. They have a shot. They probably could have beaten Misfits. They probably would have had a shot at Echo Fox. Maybe not once Fuji stepped in, but before then. So it's really hard to say. And then there's actually a few really, really strong teams. Rage Pingers made it all the way, all the way to almost beating 101 in a best of 3, taking a game off of them, but ultimately losing, and really, really close series. So there's a team that almost beat the number 1 seed from Challengers, right? You also have Team Enforcers that has a lot of top-tier talent that a lot of people have been looking at and saying, yep, this team has got the potential to really shake up. The Team Enforcers, they've got Afro, Archaic, and Quarry, as well as Loha. A little bit of some drama around those players, but they are qualified and eligible to play this split. So, they're going to be shaking up the scene as well.
Cool. All right, well, I'm excited to watch. I know it always gets more interesting towards the end, but yeah, it's neat to see what these players pull out, especially early on.
Right. And we got Ardent, Noble Pro, and NRG back in it as well. Yeah. So again, like we talked about before, we've got a lot of really cool orgs that are still down here in the Challenger series that are really worth coming out and watching.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, before we get in the news, I know you mentioned VIS Pro earlier. Is that something that's going to come back, or are you super busy with the Challenger part now?
I don't have anything specific to announce, but I can tell you that VIS Pro is something that we really love here at VIS. We're definitely going to be committed to continuing VIS Pro. So you don't have to worry. We'll be announcing signups and stuff like that once we get to a date that makes sense for when we've had it scheduled. We scheduled a lot of this stuff already out pretty far in advance. We just, definitely there's a lot of awareness of the esports community, the mobile Vainglory competitive scene as a whole. And we really try to focus our calendar on not conflicting with a lot of these. We really want to make sure that we find a nice spot where teams are comfortable playing, feel like it's good for them to play. It doesn't conflict with anything else. That's really the biggest thing that we focus on is at VIS Pro is now as we take more and more on with VIS for 64 and for challengers, we want to make sure that VIS Pro still has a home and still has a very comfortable place for all the teams and orgs. We kind of moved away from a league-like structure to micro tournaments, mini tournaments, and we kind of liked how that worked out. So maybe something like that will be coming down the line.
Yeah, and it's finding time for yourself to make it all happen. Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, super excited about the Challenger and everything this is doing. Very awesome to talk to you about that. Before we get out of here, I know we've been talking about this for a long time. There was some fun little news things that came out this past week, so let's jump into that real quick.
Vainglory News.
So we finally got a new hero tease. So this is going to be probably something coming in update 2.4. It was this little video that they put together of basically like a new undead kind of hero. It takes place in a graveyard.
I mean, it's true how they played it. I was really surprised watching this. I'm like, wait, is this Halloween already? I mean, this felt like just a setting. Maybe the seasons were a little off. But yeah, it looked like some kind of Reaper. I think I saw something like that. So I'm not sure. I'd be really surprised if they came out with another hero that like resurrected. I'm not sure if they want too many of those on the fold right now. But definitely someone related to, I don't know, I really don't know anything about this hero, but I know that it looks exciting. Obviously, like you said, something related to undead, maybe like a cruel-like hero, something like that.
Yeah, well, we only have Cruel is our only, like, I guess, evil hero, like our dark hero in the game. So I feel like you need to have that balance. You never want too many of them, otherwise the game feels dark and menacing to some degree. So I think it's about time after, especially someone like Flicker and Grumpjaw that are like kind of these just wacky kind of fun heroes, kind of coming back to something evil would be nice.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I've got to be honest, I've always been overly impressed with the direction SCMC has taken with these heroes. They always blow my mind with like, wow, that's way better than I thought it was going to be. And it sometimes takes a little bit of time of improving. One of the things they've really improved on is not releasing broken heroes into the game. I mean, I remember back in the day where heroes would come out and be overpowerful, and they've really done a good job at just, we'll release them as a little bit underpowered and then tweak them slowly up. And I think that's been pretty good, Brad. I mean, it's definitely improved the playing experience for a lot of these people.
Yeah, that PvE community and testers, they do a really good job making sure that these heroes don't come out way too strong. So yeah.
So definitely exciting there. This will be the 32nd hero in Vainglory. So we've already passed the 30 mark. 31 was Grumpjaw, and then Flicker was 30th. So yeah, we've been moving along pretty nicely.
That's crazy. I feel like it was just a dozen not too long ago. It's nuts.
Yeah, we've been on up.
The other bit of news that was announced was this Halcyon Days. I would say event, but it's much more of just a sale this time. Someone did share a link to the previous Halcyon Days 2016 version that took place, which was much more of an event where you like day 1, day 2, day 3, you got kind of these rewards, glory, and things like this. But this new Halcyon Days thing, it's basically you can get some of these summer party skins, Cruel, Saw, Kestrel, for less opals. So between April 12th and April 17th, you get summer party discount skins. So if you don't have these skins yet, if you missed them out last summer when they came out, this is your chance to pick them up now. I didn't think about this not being an event like last year's until I saw this link someone shared, which does make it seem like we're seeing less events from Vainglory right now. Like they're not focused on these like grind, play every day, get some glory, get this.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say because they created a new system. I mean, a lot was different back then, right? Yeah. They were, releasing skins and there was a lot of cards. And plus, I think they probably got a lot of good feedback on how, like, collecting all these cards, right? That was the way it used to be, right? You had to collect 50 cards to get this hero unlocked. And there was a grinding process. And I think they're trying to kind of pull away from that. They want you to play. They want you to grind, but they don't want it to be such a job. And I'm actually okay. And I'm a big fan of the sales. Now, these things on Opals, they don't benefit me. I have them all. In fact, I have every special edition skin that's ever come out. So I have like 2,000 opals that I don't think I'm ever going to use.
Right, same.
And it's like a perk of being an OG player, but then it's a downside because it's like, wait, I have this currency that to a lot of people is really desirable, but to me, it's almost worthless. So maybe they could release some cool stuff that comes out on opals sooner. I'm so impatient. I end up buying these skins right away, and then not getting a use out of these other currencies in the game. But I actually really love what SMC's done. I think they've created a much more transparent, a much more interesting skin system out of what they had, which I think they pivoted really, really well. You can buy cheaper skins or buy more expensive skins,
Right.
and you can earn them, but you can earn them a really long way, or you can, earn them a very quick way. And then you have these like super, super special skins that are super dorky, silly, and I love them. I have all of them. So it's really cool. It's really becoming a nice, mature, kind of complex marketplace, which I really am a fan of. And I'd like them to find a way to convert opals into some other kind of currency.
Something else, yeah. But yeah, on the grinding thing, yeah, like in 2016, we didn't have this sunlight. We didn't even have chests, so there wasn't a lot of other ways to get, I want to say, free stuff. Like you just open up the game now and get free things. So it's not surprising that we wouldn't have an event like this now when there's so many other ways. Like, what else could they do? Just give you the skins for free at this point.
Absolutely. I mean, they're trying to create more and more interesting ways to earn them, and trying to create a more stable, more consistent currency system and cards and skin system, but something that also, that's easy to learn, but makes it a long process so that you really have something to work for. There's still a few skins I don't have that I'm working for, so I actually can appreciate, for a lot of these players that are new, when they want a skin, when they've got their eyes on one, they really got to work for it unless they want to, pull out the wallet and empty it out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely pretty happy with how it's all kind of played out. I actually think that you'll see more events. I actually think that, as we get, we're kind of still in summer here. Or we're still in spring, but as we get into summer, I think you'll see some cool summer events come out as well. So I wouldn't say that less events. I think maybe we got a little spoiled, though. There was a big spurt of them that season.
Well, then the last bit of news is I continue to mention all these API projects that are happening. But Vainglory was just having the API challenge, and the winners got announced, and then they made a page now. You can go on the forums, the link in the notes, that you can look at them all, and there's so many good ones, right? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's incredible. So much talent that you didn't know was there. You would think, I know everyone in the Vainglory community, and then you see these people coming out with these websites that are really well, and I had not heard of any of the ones that were in the runner-up or won the tournament. I hadn't heard of any of those. I'm one of those guys stuck on VG Minor and VG Pro.
Okay.
GG. I'm at those sites almost exclusively, so it was actually kind of nice that these smaller, less well-equipped, maybe a little bit slower to getting the API stuff, were able to kind of get a little bit of shine, a little bit of chance to show what they've got. I really loved the Academy. That actually really impressed me.
The Vainglory University one, that one?
Oh, the University, yeah.
That one's really cool. And the Discord bots are awesome. Like, this kind of almost shows like Discord is this crazy tool that when people make these bots and things like this and build these things like the barracks or other chat room group things, it's like, oh my gosh, like Discord can do all this, and have a bot like this that can spit back your match history is really cool with the EZL bot. And I know there's a couple other bots too.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I can kind of imagine that being a little bit trolly as someone starts spamming your losses. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, you don't want to see those. Delete that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really impressive. And I think that this is something that's really, really good. A lot of people have criticized SCMC for maybe being really slow on making changes, making progress. And this would be a great example of them realizing that, maybe acknowledging that, and just doing their best to get this power, this data into the hands of people who are motivated to work on this exclusively, to be very focused. I don't think we ever would have seen anything nearly as good as what we see out there today at all if they hadn't opened this up. If they tried to do this in game themselves, if they tried to make this a closed off API that they would bring to us and just listen to feedback, it would take them forever. to prioritize all of the requests people want, and then instead giving this to the community to do what they want with it, to really explore every facet of it, has resulted in just, I think, one of the best changes that has happened to Vainglory at all ever. This has been the absolute biggest fundamental shift in Vainglory, giving this information from a competitive side, but also from a social side. We can share things in a way that we could never share before, and learn in a way we never could learn before.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, just the team hasn't been as big over there to make this stuff. We're seeing them now hire almost new people in every role. I've been seeing like every day or every week a new position's getting opening. So I think they're finally realizing, hey, we need more people to make this happen, and we're finally growing and can do this. But yeah, they wouldn't have been able to like dedicate the team of someone just to program and make these API websites for themselves. Yeah. So it's really nice.
It's true. And it's kind of a good thing. And, so as much as I want to see the end of my game have this incredible, here's all your stats and here's everything you can learn about your game, I'd much rather them give this to the community the way they have and let the community do this. I know it means that it's not as accessible to some people. You may download this game and not know that these sites exist. And so, there needs to definitely be eventually this in-game setup where some of this stuff is provided. But for right now, I think that, the community's pretty tight, pretty good as communicating across Twitter or Reddit or the forums. I think that this is a really great way, at least for the next 6 months, maybe even to a year, to just allow this to grow as it is.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, that's going to do it for episode 150, DragonBorne. We talked for a long time here. There's just the pro scene and the esports stuff and everything that's coming out is really exciting. Like, there's a lot in the works with the 5v5 and new heroes, and just like I don't even know what's gonna happen. Every week it seems like something new is popping up. So thanks for coming on with me on this week's episode and celebrating the 150th episode.
It's been a long run, man. Brad, you've been one of the original OGs putting this stuff out since the beginning, and I'm just excited that I'm still part of the Vainglory community. I can't really think of doing anything other than Vainglory related stuff, really. So I'm really excited where it's coming. There's so many exciting things. You've talked about a lot of this, a lot of the plans, a lot of the changes coming up to Vainglory over the next 6 months to the year. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited how transparent SEMC has become on their plans. This is a really, really big, surprise, I think, for any company to be so transparent on, how things are completing. So I think if you're out there, you like certain parts of the game, but there's things you don't like, I think that this is the year that everything we've asked for is going to start slowly getting answered. The checklist is getting smaller and smaller, at least for me.
Yeah, for sure. So where can people find you? VIS starts again on Tuesday, right? Twitter.
Yep, VIS. Yeah, make sure you follow VIS League for all updates. You can follow me at DragonBorne VG. And, of course, watch me live on Twitch and Mob Crush. We do dual stream it across both platforms.
Nice.
It's going to be twitch.tv/VisLeague and then mobcrush.com/VisLeague. Make sure you go follow us on both those mediums if you like. We have a pretty good production, a lot of good stuff. And, of course, we'll be the only place you can watch competitive Echo Fox and Misfits for the next couple of weeks. Not that they're happy about that, but it's definitely going to be a really exciting season.
Cool. Then you can follow Shatter The Vain on Twitter at Shatter The Vain, website shatterthevain.com. All the episodes get posted there, links to the iTunes, Stitcher, the YouTube version as well. And yeah, I'll be back with 151 next week as all more Vainglory stuff comes out and more esports. So still lots to talk about every week. Thanks for listening.
Let's get this over with.